Hey, for a lot of people who maybe have joined this channel in the last few months, few days, last year, may not have realised that Sun and Moon was a much bigger channel. Originally, we started in 2016 and 2019, YouTube, I just woke up, YouTube had taken the channel for no reason. They gave me a list of about 50,000 things I could have done, but they wouldn't explain to me. They wouldn't explain to me anything that I'd done. 25 emails to ask them to explain what they'd done to my channel. They wouldn't talk to me. Not at all. Wouldn't email me, wouldn't do nothing. Anyway, I had downloaded some of the Hangouts from this channel, and what I'm going to do today is something different, because Sun and Moon was, or still is, a research group. We used to do masses more research, but then we did do quite a lot of research. So at a certain period of time, we decided to go with the people instead and do it more as a people channel, have the people come and chat to us rather than just having researchers, because we've done so much research. We still don't know what shape or size or anything, so that's what we did. Anyway, I used to go on the channel. There I am on the video. Anyway, what I decided to do was take a part of this hangout. This hangout was about electrical arcings and about the stone balls that fall from the sky. The hangout that I'm using has artists, is the person doing the pictures, and later on in that hangout, Angel Geezer, he is into pyramids, turns up. On the hangout is a lady called Judith and Patricia. They sit very quietly because they were listening in. But anyway, sit back and enjoy this great hangout. I do admire artists and his hard work for this hangout. Anyway, thank you very much. Enjoy. Cool. Hey, good evening, everybody. We are back tonight. The date is the 26th of the 11th, 2017. So far on the panel, we have Judith from Israel, Patricia from the UK, me from the UK, and artists from Germany. And what we're going to do is, or what artist is going to do, is a continuation of these electrical strikings which happened over the plane we lived on. And who'd like to mention that it's a continuation of Chris Monk's work. So artists, I just wanted you to explain a little bit about Sun and Moon, because I had one comment on the channel, and I asked you if you explain what Sun and Moon is and then go into your research.
Well, indeed, like you already said the last word, we are about researching everything on the flat plane. And we are a research group, and we invite all kinds of people to show their research and show their work and show all the research they did, like Chris Monk, Rose Sanchez, Santos, me, all other people, FPV, a lot of, many others, of course. And we are a research group, and we are investigating the world we live on.
And what's the other objective that we're trying to do, artists?
We invite everybody to
bring everybody together as best as possible.
Yeah, indeed, bring everybody together as best as possible, and exchange all our research we do, and all the and that's basically what we do. One big family, and exchanging research about everything. And that's why I like this channel, because sometimes people come on who have a puzzle piece that fits in the puzzle I'm making. And that's great that we have a research group like this, that everybody has a puzzle. And sometimes you don't know the people who has that missing puzzle, and they bring it to the table, just like in our lesson laying out. Dre had a puzzle piece he showed me. And I thought, well, wait a second, that is interesting. I'm going to investigate more about this, those Lindenberg figures. And they were exactly fitting in my work. And that was one of the missing puzzle pieces. So that's why this group is so great, that you sometimes out of a direction you least expect, somebody brings the piece of research they did, and then you think, oh, that's it, that's the missing piece. Now I can go further with my research. So that's
Yeah, and
great.
that's kind of what happened last night as well, by the way, because there's a few things he made me think about. I
Mhm.
don't know if he made Santos think. Maybe Santos made him think. He made Santos think.
Of course.
And then not just that, Bro Sanchez on this last bit, I didn't know, as I said, that he was recording. Our link finishes at 8 hours. That's as
Yeah.
long as we can stream for. So of course mine just stops, but he's on OBS or something,
Mhm.
and it meant he could go on for as long as he liked. And so there was a part that I thought we were on an after hangout, and I was yip yapping away to him. I didn't realise we were live on his channel. Anyway, at the end of that, he's going, "You've really made me think about some things."
Yeah,
And that's what it's about. It's about
that's the
it's not
important
about
thing.
being shut off and you know everything, because we don't know everything.
No, you have
About
to, you have to be
reacting
you have to be open to
and
other people, their works, because sometimes I see work that I don't like for maybe 70%, but that 30% that is in there sometimes helps me understand other things I'm investigating. So even though if you don't agree 100% with somebody, they still can bring some things to the table that you think, hey, that's interesting. That I didn't know that. That helps me in my research. And
yeah,
sometimes
that
even
last that little bit of video that's got me and Bro on it, he says there repeatedly, "You've made me think about things. You've made me think about things. You've made me think about that. I'm going to look into that. I'm going to." Well, that's more exciting than a wall, isn't it? Oh, I know everything and all that anger and everything. We don't know everything. We're
no,
all learning still. Anyway, I just wanted to say that's a thank you, artist.
yeah, you're absolutely right. We are a research group and we research
And a
things.
community, and a
And a
community,
community.
both. It's the researching and the people. Without one, there's nothing.
Indeed, indeed, the people. That's the important thing, of course. Of course. Yeah.
And over to you. You're going to do this electrical arcing. Thanks for that, artist. I just wanted, sometimes it's better when someone else says it than me
Yeah, yeah, for
about
sure.
the group.
Sure. But I agree 100% with you that all research is good, even if you don't agree with it, because sometimes somebody has another kind of research, and then at the end, the ends meet and you have things in common. So it's always great to listen to everybody.
Yeah. And you've been doing some more research, haven't you, which you showed us the other day, which you're going to
Yeah.
present now.
Yeah. Then in continuing research, the continuing research.
Do I
Okay.
present you then? I'm just going to
Yeah,
present you.
I've got the first picture up.
Oh, there's those.
Yeah.
That picture.
Well, I think I start a little bit with I discussed last time around. Let me clear my throat and take a sip of my tea, and then I'm going.
Are you going to go for as long as Bro? 10 hours.
No, that's way too long for me.
And then did anybody notice he didn't go to the loo and he didn't have a drink? He did when we finished streaming on Sun and Moon. He went to the loo,
Yeah.
but he did. He just went for 8 hours.
I was stretching it, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he has a bottle under his desk. Who knows? I don't know. Yeah. Okay, here's the next bit in the presentation. First, a little recap of last time. These are those spheres that Dr. C.J. Ransom did in certain kinds of sand. That you can see how the sand reacts to a discharge of electrical experiments, positive and negative discharges and everything. You can see that outer rim, sometimes the middle is pushed up and the rim, and you can see all kinds of shapes happening, but most of the time you can see the rim very clear. Those electrical discharges here, some couple in a row, so it's not always one. It's sometimes there are a couple, like here. And if you look at another one who did those same kind of research with sands and metal, powdered metal, and powder metals fused with the sands, and then a discharge in it, and you can see positive and negative discharges, and you can see that happening the same pattern. It goes out almost like a snow crystal a bit. Here's another one. You can see all those lines going out and towards each other. You can see clearly the discharges. Here's another one just to show you all the experiments William George Armstrong did with the discharges. You can see the pattern and some all things going out in different kinds of shapes. So you can see all the shapes that are happening when you have discharges. This already looks a little bit like a plant almost, or on the surface. Here you have found another one I didn't show last time. You can see those discharges just in like with that other guy. Only there's some more points and a nice round discharge. This one is also interesting from George Armstrong. You can see this nice discharge to somebody in the chest last time. And it looks a bit like a human eye. So I thought, well, let's see
Artist, these pictures are quite old, aren't they, the ones that you're showing us?
Yeah, this is from the 1800s. So that's very old. And after that, there weren't a lot of people who did that experiments again. So basically, there are two guys, as far as I know, who did those experiments. And I'm glad you can find them in old archives. It's sometimes a little bit hard to find, but you can find them. If you type in electrical discharges, for sure you will find these. And this again, like somebody said in the chat, looks a little bit like a human eye. And I thought, well, let's see how a human eye looks. Well, you can see looks the same. Also that black hole in the middle. You can see all those lines going out, electric lines. So that was very interesting. That looks a lot like an electrical discharge. And I found out what Dre was mentioning was the Lichtenberg figures, and I thought, well, let's check into that. Basically, it's a microwave transformer. There's an old microwave, and you hook those up, those electrical clips. You discharge them in a piece of wood. First, you have to make the wood a little bit wet, so the discharge is going a little bit more smooth. And then this is the first stage. I took some screenshots of a video. And this is how the discharge goes further. You can see a tree-type shape. It almost looks like a tree or a bush a bit. Very organic. And then it goes further. And at the end it meets towards it. So the discharges are looking for the other charge to click onto each other. You can see a tree type of shape. That was very interesting. And I thought, well, those three type of shapes you also see on the Earth. This is another Lichtenberg figure, so you can see that the shapes sometimes differ a bit. If you compare that to Google Maps, you go on Google Maps, you compare it to that. You can see he also discharge, very clear. Very darker than the rest of the surroundings. This one is far darker. And you can see the discharge going over here, like a tree type of shape of a tree. And here's another one going down, and they look exactly like those this Lichtenberg figures. So I thought that was interesting, that those discharges look exactly like those Lichtenberg figures often. And you can see this is basically that mountain, this dark mountain in the right corner. If you look close to it, you can see that it's all crumbled down by a strong force. This was probably once a solid mountain. And that was basically pushed out of the earth, because I think everything was pushed out of the earth. And sometimes the surface is also lowered. So you have two ways. Sometimes it's pushed up and the surface is lowered, or only it was pushed up, or only the surface is lowered. But I've showed that in the other pictures. You can see this is pushed out and it's crumbled down. It's not that solid anymore. It became rubble. And here's some other figures. Here, this is in Sirat in Egypt, near Chad, Sudan, in Egypt.
Hey, artist, the one thing you've noticed by all these Archings, the trees are growing, yeah?
Yeah, That's another thing that I will show in a bit. Indeed, near those
sorry.
Archings, often, no worries, Karen. Often near those discharges, the trees grow better. You can also see these are basically also plant life in those Archings. And I have one that I can zoom in here. You can see also these discharges very clear. And here in the mountains, and indeed, like Karen mentioned, those trees are very nearby here. In those Archings, the discharges in the mountains even, it's most time the most fertilized ground in the area. And what's also interesting, sometimes you have those strikes, a positive and negative strike, and you don't see nothing on the surface. Well, often it's underground. Like this jewel cave, it's a national monument, and it's also near those discharges near the petrified forest, because you don't, in the petrified forest, you sometimes don't see those tree-type shapes, those electrical discharges, but they are underground. So that's interesting that sometimes it's not on the surface, it's underground. And this one is just found one in Africa, in Botswana. Well, this looks a lot like a tree. So there are trees on the flat surface, only they're not vertically, they are horizontal. Because this is a very clear tree type.
That's crazy, isn't it, artist?
Yeah. It's very, very, you can find this very easily. If you zoom in on a part of Africa that is South Africa, you can find this shape very easily. In Botswana, Africa, it's even on a high altitude, you can see this very clear. And this is also a discharge that I found in Australia. I thought let's see also other countries, and you can see this is the discharge. You zoom in, very clear, that rounded shape, just like those tests they did with powdered sands and powdered metals, that you get the discharge. This is exactly the same shape. And you can see what happens around it. If you take a look, you can clearly see that those discharges here, all the mountains are pushed aside. Very clear, like a ripple effect almost. There's a very strong force that went straight through this surface and pushed up mountains and pushed down surfaces. Here over here you can even see those tree-type figures, because there isn't even water in this area. But still you can see all those lightning strikes. They just like lightning in the sky. That is also electric. Also looks like that, and it also looks like trees. So it's all electric, magnetic discharges. And then you get all these kinds of shapes, those craters and those pushed up surfaces. And this is a close-up of that. This mount, near Mount Connor. This is the Boos Bluff crater. So, interesting name. And this is basically near that, close by. And this is the Mount Connor. And this is pushed up. So this is pushed down into the surface, the earth. And this is pushed up from the surface from the earth. And again, see, like in those experiments in the beginning, you have a rim around it. Here you have a rim that is pushed up a bit. Then the rest is lowered a bit. You can see that. And then this is pushed up again. So you have an outer rim that is pushed up. Inside it's pushed down a bit. And in the middle it's pushed up again. So often this kind of shape you can see with those electrical discharges. This is from the side. No, you can clearly see it. Yeah, to me it looks like it was pushed up, very clear. And again, like Karen mentioned, a lot of trees in this area and surrounding. There are also trees, but in this area the trees are the biggest and the highest, almost 99% of the time. So that's interesting. This basically distance is 184 kilometers from Mount Connor to the Boos Bluff crater. You can see the electrical discharge happening. Here it's very dark, and here there are waters again with salty waters. That's also often the case that you have salty lakes near them, because the salt is attracted to that area, and also iron and minerals are attracted to the area. Often those mountains are rich of iron or minerals. And just like I showed near that area, very close by is this Nicholson's gold mine. So you can see even gold is
Just to
attracted to that
explain,
area.
artists, when those Archings happened,
Yeah.
it's what Chris Monk reckoned as well as you, that this would have all taken just minutes to do.
Yep.
This whole thing would happen just.
Yep. Because indeed, yeah, it takes minutes because sometimes you see it's frozen in time. You can see it happening also with those balls lying around because a lot of the times near these strike zones and in these electrical discharges, you see spherical balls lying around. And this is another crater. Again, you can see the outer rim is pushed up again. And near that is the other surface is pushed up. And this is pushed down, basically pushed down. You get a ring around it. And again, trees. Very all the trees.
Artists, just to let you know, Chris Monk's in the chat room.
Okay, cool. Hey, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
Thanks for being here.
Hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
Yeah, if you want to come on, please do.
Yes, Chris, if you wanted to come on.
You can come on. If you don't, it's all right with me. Okay.
We love you, Chris.
Oh, yeah, sure we do. We love everybody who does great research.
Oh, he's a friend as well, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's very nice to me all the time. And then he was also very nice in posting in the last comment that he thought I did a great job in explaining it. So that is always nice to hear that from somebody like him. And
Come with the guitar.
What are you saying, Edith?
Bring the guitar.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, we missed the guitar.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, an artist misses playing his little mouth organ.
Yeah, sometimes Chris has also interesting things to say, and we do research, and we fill the research time in with the guitar and loud harp. Yeah, it's always fun. But let's go on a little bit. This is another crater. This is, again, you can see one is a crater, one is pushed up again from the ground. Very, very clear. And it's iron rich or metal rich. And near that site, dus near this site, where those mountains are, these are the Ngumbam cliffs near the Wolf Creek crater. So this is the Wolf Creek crater. And these are the Ngumbam cliffs, and this is all in Australia. And near that, again, you have those stone spherical balls, like I mentioned before, around. Sometimes they are still attached to each other. Sometimes they are loose. And you have another picture. You can see all, not one, well, tens, a lot of them lying around. Those spherical balls, and it's often the case with those electrical discharges. You have these spherical balls that are formed, and sometimes they appear to be shot out of the ground and then landed back on the ground again. And here is the same thing happening. Again, those flattened mountains, they were pushed out of the ground. Some people say those are those trees, but I don't think so, because you don't have the rest lying around. It's much more likely that it is pushed out of the ground. But again, you see this on an from a plane. This field of pushed out of the ground mountains. But near that you have those trees lying. Well, what I think that there was once a forest, maybe high trees, maybe trees of 20 meters high, 40 meters high, like that height. Not higher, I think, in my opinion. But those trees were petrified, and maybe also turned into minerals almost by the strike. So the strike was happening so fast that they turned the trees into minerals, and they petrified the trees. It was caused by the strike. That's my opinion. What happened, and it's more logic, because here you have those flattened mountains in the distance. This is that area I showed in Arizona. And you can clearly see all those trees that are in that strike zone region all turned into stone. So I think that what happened, that there were, well, big trees around, but not that big that some people think they were. Just maybe 20 or 40 meters, and I don't want to go farther than that high. And they were struck by this electrical strike, a discharge. And the trees became petrified. Here you can see the surface also almost like sand petrified. It became solid. The ground became solid as a rock because of those strikes. You can see the shapes, very strange shapes you get, and it's also pushed out of the ground. You see in this rim, it is also pushed out of the ground, like the surface was almost like it was cooking. Like you're cooking a pancake. Sometimes it bubbles also, and you get the surface like this. So the surface was boiling and was pushed out of the ground a bit. And you get this kind of surface, and you can see those flattened mountains in the back that basically was part of the huge strike that went down in this area. Again, you can see here, this is the Barrington crater, very big crater, and this is a hill that. It's also interesting, this hill fits almost exactly into this crater. It's almost like an electric socket. It fits into each other, and the mountains in between are pushed up from the ground. Very, very clear. And here you have the Barrington crater. Just the measurements, you can see how big it is. And it is 1.2 kilometers wide. So that's very wide. You can see people inside, and you can see how big it is. A very, very big crater. But if you look at that mountain, this is basically, I think, the negative discharge, and this is the positive discharge. And in the positive discharge, the soil is very rich, and so therefore the trees grow there bigger, stronger, and higher. If you zoom in this area, you can see all those trees. This is basically this area zoomed in, and the surrounding areas don't have a lot of trees. Only this soil is very fertilized by the strike, and that makes the tree grows bigger and stronger. So that's very interesting. That is often the case with those strikes, that the soil is enriched and the trees grow better.
Thanks for noticing it, artist.
Also here you have also a hole, and this is also
what you noticed, isn't it? You said you noticed that around all these sort of root arcing part, all the trees were growing, and you realised they weren't growing up. It was growing sort of, well, they are growing up, but if from the air they look vertical, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, those strikes appear to be those are horizontal in those areas, and this area is the trees grow better near those strikes. And here again, here you have in Easter Islands, those strikes. Here you have basically three strikes in a row. Maybe they're more underwater, because sometimes underwater there are also interesting things. But yeah, it's unfortunate that you can't look underwater in Google. But you can see this one was the third one. It's basically swallowed by the sea. You have three mountains that are pushed clearly out of the ground, because this is not a normal mountain range that the plates go against each other and were pushed up a bit. These are pushed out of the ground by an electrical discharge. And here again you have a mountain with trees on it. Here on this side you can see not very big trees, but again most of the trees are in this area again. Here you have a whole patch of trees, here. There's also a hole with trees in it. So trees are attracted to that area. Also minerals and iron-rich things are attracted to this area. You can see a big hole and a big mountain. This mountain again fits almost exactly into this hole. That's often the case. This is a close-up of the hole. You can see this pushed into the ground. You have a lake and a lot of trees surrounding it. You can see that here a little bit better. And also smaller bushes here, very small bushes. This is mostly the area that is enriched with fertilized ground. And then again, it looks like those experiments, just to show you that this looks a lot like those powdered sands, those experiments. The same shape occurs. And what is inside those craters is also interesting. Those statues on Easter Island, because this is still Easter Island, look in toward this crater. So this is interesting. You can see those statues looking in toward the crater. Most of the time, people only think, well, they're only on the coastline looking at the sea. No, there are also those statues looking in toward this crater. So it must be important. Otherwise, you don't build a whole lot of structures that look in toward the crater, because it's secret ground, probably. And they knew that it was important. You can see again those a little bit close by those mountains on Easter Island that were pushed out of the ground. And you can again see most of the trees are in that area again. Here you can see it from the ground. This was only one picture I could find of these 3 mountains that were pushed out of the ground. And you can clearly see it is pushed out of the ground. Like you have a piece of clay and you put your thumb under it and you push, get the same type of shape. And this is in Castle Rock in New Zealand. You can see a big strike happened and basically turned the mountains into rubble. A very big strike. You can see those mountains again are pushed out of the ground. Very clear. On the angle, it's a little bit on the angle, sideways. But here you can see it's pushed out of the ground in the distance. Yeah, not pushed out, very clear. The weathering is very big on those stones. Maybe those holes were caused by weathering. Maybe it was because of the strike. I don't know for sure. I have to do a little more research about it. You can see the size of those rocks. Those are very big. Here's a bicyclist who's bicycling through those mountains. And you can see the strike in all kinds of directions of that mountain. Very strong force, because you can see all those rubble lying around, all those stones lying all over the place. They were shot out of the mountains, yeah, all around, and those holes. What is also interesting on this side, you can see those holes again in the stone. Very strong force made those holes. Maybe this is where those balls were extracted and were shot into the ground, or in the air and then later onto the ground. It's also spherical shapes, or spherical balls, or spherical shapes in the stone. And what is also interesting, I saw this video, and you have here a structure that is very sharp here, with edges that are very sharp. If you zoom in a little bit into that, you can see a very sharp edge. So what is a possibility on this strike zone? Often they build nearby, or actually on the site, they build ancient structures. Or there was already an ancient structure because of the electrical harmony in that area.
Yeah, but they obviously knew, didn't they, then, that there was a lot more, like if the trees were growing there and the rich soil, they knew, didn't they?
Yeah, of course they knew. They were very smart, because they build monolithic structures that are so advanced. It's even hard nowadays to build those structures. And you can see, what is interesting, you can see those mountains pushed out of the ground. But where is that hole, that sinkhole basically, that negative charge? Well, it's underground. It's a hole underground. So sometimes the discharge is not vertically, it's horizontal. So you have a horizontal discharge. That's why you can clearly see here also in this picture. I'll go back a little bit. The discharge is horizontal here. And under the ground, under this big mountain, you can see that the discharge is under the ground. It's basically under there. So that's very interesting, that the discharge was under the ground. Sorry. And if you go further, you have the distance, also, for instance, Devil's Tower. And you have the place called Sundance in Wyoming. And you can see this is a crater that was pushed into the ground. I will show it closer by, but basically this is Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Well, it's a little bit another state, but this is in Wyoming, Sundance, Wyoming. So you know where the location is. The distance between those mountain in this crater is almost 38 kilometers. And the discharge is also, you can see that on the surface, yeah, a little bit over here, but probably the discharge is under the ground. You have caves under the ground in this area where the discharge happens. This is Devil's Tower. Well, for me, it's very clear it was pushed out of the ground. You see the size, and I always like to show the size with a figure on it, so you can see the scale of this mountain. It is very huge, very straight corners in an hexagonal shape. You can see that from the ground, those shapes.
It's like, it's artist, it's like sequoia tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it looks a lot like organic plant life indeed. Yeah. And if you look very close to the surface, a guy was very thankful that he made a picture close up. You can clearly see that there are minerals in Devil's Tower, all kinds of minerals, and they are attracted to the site often. And then you can see all kinds of minerals, or sometimes it's iron rich or metal rich. And you have also in the coastline of Northern Ireland, you can see that it was pushed out of the ground. And then you look, if you compare it to the shape of a honeycomb, you can see also they use the same shape. So there's something with this shape that is very natural to occur. That's why I showed this beehive. That you can see that is a very natural shape. Also, insects make. This is Devil Tower pushed out of the ground, very clear to me. And this is that other strike that is nearby Devil's Tower, in Sundance, near Sundance, Wyoming. And you can see the star shape into the ground. It also looks very like this experiment of a discharge in powders. Metal powders and sands, you get the same type of shape. So that's very interesting. And this is another one. This is DuPont tape in Colombia. You can see this is also from this is very clear pushed up. You have an observation deck with a thrift store and everything, and you can buy probably pictures of this mountain. And you have
Artist, it's a very interesting question in the chat room right now that Trouble's asked.
Okay.
She put, push those mountains out of the ground. Does it change the nature of the rocks raised, or is it just raising certain types of rock?
It raises the rock that is in that area, but it attracts metal from the surrounding area. So with the discharge, the mountain is pushed out of the ground, but it's not only that rock that is underneath that is pushed out, or the surface that is pushed out. It's also it attracts minerals and metals from the surrounding area. It is like a magnet. It attracts all the minerals and metals from the surrounding area, and that they are pushed also into that rock. So often, like I showed before, you have minerals in those rocks, or it is metal rich, iron rich, or it's gold with gold, or other kinds of metal, copper. Hope that answers this question.
Trouble's a girl. She's an Australian lady, but yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, artist. So it doesn't change the rocks themselves then?
Change them in that kind of way, that they are more metal and metal rich, or they are rich with the gemstones.
Chris has added in the chat, when the rock is created instantly by the electricity as it fuses sand together into rock formations.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great explanation of it, yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
It fuses sands into rock, and also it attracts metal-rich things in the ground. It's attracted into that. And on this mountain, this sometimes plant life is very different from the surroundings. This is basically the Pychyama heteropolia plant, but I won't pronounce it again. And you have a different kind of plant that is related to this plant. It looks very much alike, only I think it's more reddish of a color. And it is a little bit different, but it's related to this plant. And that plant only grows on this surface of this mountain. So often there's also specific plants that grow on those mountains and not in the surrounding area. And this is basically that strike I showed a couple of times. This is in Bolivia and Peru. And here you have that strike, and it goes all the way down, basically pushed down aside those mountains. Here you can just strike very clear, pushed like you push with your thumb in the sand. You get that same shape. And this goes all the way. Here you can see the surface is boiling. Again, a very big salt lake. Like there's often near that area a very big salt lake. Here, this is the end of the strike, and this is 18 miles from point to point, so you can see the distance. You get a bit of, you see how big of a scale this is. And the strike goes all the way up, and in this lake,
artists, and they're not showing any curve, are they?
No, very flat. Yeah, all flat. I think it also on a flat surface, those strikes are far more easier. If you have a rounded surface, that strike wouldn't appear to be the same shape, I think, in the same kind of fashion. So I have to do a little bit more research on it, but I think those strikes only can occur on a very level plane, in my opinion. And even in Africa, you have those strikes, and here, if you look closer on these mountains, you have here the darker mountain. You zoom into this. Sometimes you can't zoom into a mountain because the image is not very sharp, but sometimes you can in this way, and you can see again they are extracting material from the mountain that is iron rich, probably. It's a kind of metal they are extracting, so that's often in the mountain. And this is again the hole, the crater, and it looks like it's a centrifugal force, or the force that was turning around, the spin and everything outside. Again, you have here, if you look very close, those three type of shapes. So it's all electric. See, there's no water over here, but still you can see all those trees type of shapes going outwards. So that also proves very clear those three type of shapes that look a lot like those Lindenberg figures I showed before. Very, very clear. So that's also very interesting. And you have those holes here. You have basically a very big hole. And again, the middle part is pushed up. So again, the same type of fashion. Here you have two smaller ones nearby, and then a bigger one over here. Again, you have the outer rim is pushed up, then it was pushed down, and the inner circle is pushed up again. And here you have that in South America, and near Antarctica, you have a big strike on all the way going here. It was pushed very clearly, and this was the end. And in this area, you have all kinds of different kinds of surfaces on the Earth that look very strange, like this one, all those balls. Again, exactly like those experiments I showed before from William George Armstrong and Dr. C.J. Ransom. Exactly like those experiments. It's very, very interesting. Here's another one. You can see all those craters and mountains here. This pushed down, this is pushed up, this was pushed up, this was pushed down. It's almost like you looking at the moon. Maybe sometimes they will make a landing on Mars here. Look, it's Mars. And they will fake it like they often do. Here, in those, here you can see this one is pushed down. Again, you have a salt lake here. The surface is pushed down and it's boiling the surface. And here the surface is pushed up. So it's pushed down and up. Here you have another strike zone that looks very similar in that one in South America and in Antarctica, but this is maybe the northern part of South America. This is Mexico. That's the Caribbean Sea area. Whammo! We went straight. You can see this line going up. Okay, and also here on the surface, those mountains are pushed here, up, pushed aside. Everything very, very clear to me. And you have those sinkholes in this area. The ground is not that stable anymore. The sinkholes. Yeah, if you have a bigger sinkhole, this is a house. I wouldn't like to live here because it appears to be very dangerous. This sinkhole, and maybe the ground sunken down because of the electric strike. The surface is still not that stable in certain parts of the world. And again, those spherical balls, like I mentioned before, in this near this area, you see where you have this big sinkhole. You have those spherical balls, and here you have spherical balls that are still into the ground. So it's very probably it happened like those balls were shot out of the ground because of the electrical discharge and then fell back down to the earth again. Because most of the time you can only see just the surface of the balls because those were dug up from the ground. So that's very interesting that all near those strike zones, you all those spherical balls lying around almost every time. Sometimes I can find those spherical balls, but they are probably there are around. But yeah, you don't have photographs of them. So I think maybe near to 100% of the time you have those spherical balls. Only sometimes you can't find the pictures of them. And this is just another example. This is in Kazakhstan. You see an electrical discharge, going to the mountain. Basically, it's squashing the mountains flat. And near that area again, you can see those Lindenberg figures above. You zoom in a little bit. Here you have all those three type of shapes. Again, here very big ones, all near that area. And basically, these are pushed out of the ground, but it's also like some electric charge went over it. So it was pushed up and then it was smeared out. And in the middle part, near this middle part, surrounded are again spherical balls. And if not one, thousands lying around. Very, very, very interesting. And then again, like you mentioned last time, it appears that they were spun around because you have those lines. When you have a potter's wheel and you spin some clay on a potter's wheel very fast, you also get those lines. If you have handmade pottery, you have to look. If you look inside, you can see all the same kind of lines in pottery. And this basically is still fused together because the strike happened so quickly. This ball couldn't be separated from each other. Sometimes they are, so that's also fits that it was happened very fast because sometimes in the process it is frozen. And again, another picture of all those balls lying around. Sometimes they are broken because of the weathering. Most of them are still whole. And if another discharge in Romania and Bulgaria, what? Okay, here we go. So very big discharge. Boemo. And again, you can see those mountains look like three type of shapes here. Also here, this area, almost like you have. If you draw a tree, it almost appears to be the same. So the shapes are there, only they are horizontally. And again, near that mountain range, the most trees, normal trees, they are growing there. Again, near that area, nothing around it, nothing. And in that area of the strike zone, again, the most trees are there. And they are often the highest trees and the biggest trees. And again, in this area, and that's interesting where those three type of shapes are. There are the balls again in this area. You can see there's again spherical balls. Some are still attached to the mountain because they were stopped in the process. Probably if the process of that electrical discharge happened a little bit longer, just a couple of seconds, those round shapes will probably came loose from the surface. But in this fashion, they are still attached to the surface. This one is loose.
Artist, can I ask you something? You know, you said that those trees, you know, when you showed us the petrified forest, and they're like crystals, and you reckon that when the arcing happened, it changed those trees.
Yeah.
Do you think the same happened with these balls and things? They've been petrified due to the arcing, but there was something else that's been petrified, mud or something, because someone's put mud fossils.
Yeah, could be mud fossils or other kind of fossils. Yeah, that were petrified. Yeah, or even giant mushrooms.
Arcing.
Because they look appear to have a bit of a mushroom shape. Yeah. So who knows? Maybe they are petrified mushrooms, big mushrooms, or other things that mud or sand that fused and make those shapes. Because often they are round shapes. So there are a lot of possibilities. Yeah. But basically it's all petrified, or it was pushed towards the surface, and it was coming out of the surface. Because again, you can see the weathering on the stone surrounding these structures is much more. Sometimes if the weathering goes on a couple of years, probably they will come loose, because this under these round-shaped petrified or maybe fused sands is not that hard as those round shapes on top. So if the weathering goes on a little bit, those become loose and become loose globes or spherical shapes. Yeah, very spherical shapes. They are still attached. They are pushed out of the ground. Maybe they are petrified plant life. Who knows? Here you have another one that is still bubbly. This process is still stopped in a certain type of stage. So you have this stage, and the next stage is that all those balls become bigger and become loose. This is pushed again out of the surface. But the process was stopped in this moment. And you see this ball is still trying to get out. If the process lasted a couple of maybe seconds longer, this ball would pop out, and this was shot out to the sky in all directions. And this is a great example of actually when the process was stopped at a certain time. Here's another spherical ball that went up and came down, and it had a centrifugal force going around. Probably very warm or almost very hot. It became very hot and intense, and it spun around and came down. And this is a meter thick. This dolmen is a dolmen construction, metallic structure. That the ball came down and went straight through the structure, and then spinning away. And then you have this is near Camps Island. You have also all these strikes, so you can see very clear. And again, all kinds of things happening. Lines, yeah, all those lines. I talked next time also show those lines. All the way lines. It's almost like writing paper. All the lines are going this direction. And if you in this area again, near Camp Island in Russia, you have those spherical balls lying around. But sometimes they are very big, almost 2 meters or 3 meters. Sometimes they are smaller. Those are, I think, 1 meter in diameter. And you have also smaller ones. These are basically the shape of marbles. Not that very big marbles. When you played when you were a kid, you played with marbles, and those are the same size. But you can see they are iron wrists, but they are rusting. Surface is rusting. So iron is attracted to those balls and to those mountains. All types of metal and is attracted to that area, and therefore it's always rich of metals and gemstones. And this is an area that's also very interesting. That is in Ferro-Kansk in Russia. And basically, the surface is going down. What is interesting, this is almost 2 years ago, you can see the surface is going down, And you have the mountain again, the strike zone, big strike zone. And again, you have a crater, but that crater has a very interesting shape. And it's still expanding. Here you can see it's very small. This is 10 years ago. And this is only 2 years ago. So it's still going on, that strike. That electric energy is still there, forming a bigger crater. So sometimes even the process is not stopped, but it's still going on. Sometimes it's almost not noticeable, but it's still going on. So that was very interesting to me. And it has the same shape as those experiments those investigators did, Dr. C.J. Ransom and William George Armstrong. Those did those experiments with sand. So you can see this shape looks almost exactly like this shape in Russia. So that fits perfectly those experiments. You can see how big of a drop. These are people. What a big of a drop down.
Artist, this to you reminds you of the Grand Canyon, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. It does remind you of the Grand Canyon. And probably because in this area the surface is not that stable, it's still going on. The surface is probably also becoming lower and lower, this surface. So it's still sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. So and it's still expanding. So maybe in 500 or 1,000 years, this area becomes so big that it looks even more like the Grand Canyon. But it already does look like the Grand Canyon.
Hey, Artist, so something else just to say to you. FPV in the chat room reckons his opinion is the sun or the moon arced there at some point.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, it's all electrical. It's all electrical things on the Earth that, and also the sun and moon are probably have to do a lot of it because the sun and the moon are also electric and in an electric field of the whole Earth. So of course, they have to do something with it. Yeah. Here you can see how big of a drop it is. Here again, this almost looks a bit like the Grand Canyon. It's not that high, but it's still sinking and expanding. So you can see that the very big strike zone in the distance. And the trees in that area again are the biggest and the highest. Also in this area, this is the electric strike of the Potomsky crater in Russia. You can see again that outer rim, and then it pushed down and pushed up again. So you have a surface that is pushed up a little bit, and then the surrounding rim is pushed up a little bit, and the rest is basically the crater. So this has the same shape of those experiments as showed before by Dr. C.J. Ransom. You can see, if you look at this picture, this is the sharpest, and you go one back, exactly the same shape. And again, the trees in this area are the highest, the thickest. And so the trees again like to grow in this area because of the electrical discharge and strike zone. The soil became very fertile. And again, here you have another strike. This one is in the Bengal area in India. Very big strike. So if you go to India, well, you can't miss it. And again, you can see the iron in those mountains. The metal in the mountains, very clear. If you zoom into that, first the shape, first the picture of the shape. Again, the same shape as those experiments by William George Armstrong. Very, 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 very clear, the same.
Artist, very quickly. Angel's here!
Hey, Angel! Angel,
we didn't think you were coming on.
Hi, sorry. Well, I was actually on a phone call, and
okay.
But either way, I wanted to pop in, say hi, how you doing? But you're in the middle of something, so I'm just going to sit back and listen for a minute.
Yeah,
You
I'm
missed
almost
last
finished.
week. No, carry on, Otis.
Yeah, we always miss Angel because Angel has a great input, just like Green Smoke has. Again, it looks very much the same as this experiments by William George Armstrong with
Hey,
powdered
artist,
materials.
just while Angels come in, just explain a little bit about what these pictures are about for you with what you're doing, because he won't know maybe.
Yeah, I finished this part a bit, and then I will go back to the first part to explain a little bit more. But this fits also into the explaining bit. This is basically the electrical discharges with powdered sand and powdered metal. And he did a lot of experiments, and he gets different kinds of shapes of the discharge. And you get this shape, and if you compare that to this strike zone in the Harabankal area in India, it looks very much the same. What is also interesting, it's iron rich, because if you zoom into the mountain, you can see they are extracting the iron from the mountain. And also what is interesting, near that area, you have always mountains that became rubble. So it was once solid, but because of the electrical discharge, it became mountains of rubble. But now we go back to the beginning. Again, also want to show this in India. You have those Lindenberg figures. But for Angel, just a recap, I go where you can close your eyes if it's going too fast. This is the handier way to do. Well, let's rewind. Rewind.
I think you'll like all this, Angel.
Okay, this is the point that I want to come back to. This is some experiments that I showed in the beginning from William George Armstrong. It was done in the 1800s with powdered metals and powdered sands, and then a discharge in it. Also, he fused sand with certain kinds of metal, and then he put a discharge in it. And you get these types of shape, or this type of shape, or this type of shape. And if you compare that, this one to a human eye, for instance, it appears to be the same shape, very clear. And that proves that our eyes are also electrical, and all humans are basically electrical and have certain frequencies.
Do you know slash have you like paid attention to how our eyes actually transmit the colors to our brain? You know, our eyes are part of our brain.
Yeah.
Our eyes are a nerve of the brain. There are 4 sets of I forget what they call them, like nerve sensitivity levels, and depending on the color band, was it green, red, and blue, that the certain frequencies stimulate them and act as like transistors to allow a chemical reaction to go. And based on the amount of electricity that flows, we say, oh, it's that intense of blue, oh, it's that intense of red, oh, it's that intense of green. And then our brain reformulates the image, but it's all electrical. Our whole bodies are electrical.
Indeed. Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's why the electrical discharge looks a lot like a human eye. And this is basically, I don't know if you saw it ever before, this Lindenberg figures you can do with a microwave transformer. And you can you do basically a discharge of electricity into wood. And you get these type of shapes. It's basically stills from a video. And they appear to have a shape of a tree a bit, because also lightning. And what I was telling in the beginning, this is also a Lindenberg figure with an electrical discharge.
Also looks like coral.
Yeah, like coral. Yeah, indeed. It also looks like the surface in sometimes deserts. Here you have that electrical strike, and you see that line and the discharge has the same shape. And also in here in the you have also those discharges that look a lot like those Lindenberg figures, and the mountains, mountain ranges, even clearer. Because what I think sometimes, what I think that happened is that there was an electrical discharge that formed those figures, and later on, and also occurring when it was occurring, the waters were flowing to that area because it was lowered. The electrical discharge, also with the Lindenberg figures, basically burns into the ground, makes the surface lower. And when the surface is lower, all the water goes to that area, of course. So that's why often in those areas there's water, but not always. Like here in the desert, there's no water around.
What
Here, there's no water around, but still you have those
have you
discharges.
considered that while I do not disagree that at some points there is a strike and an immediate reaction, if there's a constant flow
Yeah.
of electricity, even at the micro level, as crystals and things form, as water dehydrates, as everything within nature happens, that some of these may form over time. While granted, some of them are instantaneous because of bursts, some of them may be growing to this day.
Of course, I have even a picture of it, Angel. If you just a moment, look where it is. That's because I also thought in that same way that I thought, well, it's still occurring in micro level. Sometimes you can see it clearer. I have to look further at the discharge. I had a picture somewhere. Oh yeah, over here. Sorry, hoor. I'm talking for an hour. Sometimes you have to clear your throat. This is basically this is the electrical discharge. You have the mountain, you have the crater. But this is 2 years ago. But if you go back 10 years ago, it looks like this. So it's still going on because this is, the shape is expanding, very clear. So you're absolutely right. It's sometimes the process is still going on. You can see it on Google Earth. This is not that big. It's big, but it's smaller, and it expands. Here you see it became far more wider. So indeed, it fits.
Like there's a natural draw of some way, whether it be geographical. In this way, it might be water flow, and the water is taking sediment with it. But in some cases, I'm not opposed to the idea that because this whole electrical universe thing is kind of picking up steam.
Yep.
Most people have been into the whole heliocentric and heat and, tornadoes and hurricanes being formed by hot water and cold water and hot air and cold air, and ignoring the whole electrical universe, which I really think is much more reality than just the hot air and cold air. Granted, when there's electricity, it normally generates heat, and hence, yes, there is hot air. And it could have been that scientists, again, 100 plus years ago, that weren't clued in on the whole electrical idea, that were just doing measurements and said, oh, hot air rises. Oh, that's what it is. And were benign to the electrical side of it.
Yeah.
But I do still believe that there are ley lines and points of energy where certain parts of the ground, the terra firma we live on, are pulling energy in due to iron veins and other natural minerals. And there is a natural flow of electrons in direction A or direction B. And because of that, are generating some of these patterns, in addition to where you and Chris were commenting that, and really I think it's quite evident that there were bolts of immediate reactions that were like probably instantaneous, microseconds, huge foundations of Earth moving, because I think nature can display quite awesome amounts of power, in addition to showing micro amounts of power.
Yeah. Indeed. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Thanks, Angel.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Because your vocabulary in English is far better than mine, so sometimes I'm struggling a bit with the words, and that's very great that you explain it a little bit more clear with little better words for it.
One of the things that I think that as a whole we are ignoring is the whole micro versus macro. And I think that part of the reason that Benjamin Franklin was attributed with the whole electrical thing is because it was the focus of macro. We want to like play with lightning bolts and arc welding and moving huge motors, as opposed to saying like, hey, if we rub a glass rod with some electricity, we can make a quick spark, because that's the macro level. And it's the macro level of electricity that I like to point out that we use today to do quite amazing amounts of things with macro amounts of electricity. Where 10 years ago, that same macro amount of electricity, the amount of power that I can keep in this little cell right here can charge this cell phone twice. And that is very utilitarian to me today. But this same amount of electricity a decade ago would have done nothing, because if I hooked a light bulb to it, it would have lasted 15 minutes, where now I can use an LED, which will last me 3 days. So it's how efficient we've become with our electricity that today we can use micro amounts to much greater efficiency, and we see the utilitarian abilities of it. And we can probably start to focus on, hey, in nature is moving electrons from point A to point B in tiny, minute amounts. It's just occurring in nature. And this is what really Tesla was pointing out, that there is energy around us all over. But because it's so micro amount, we couldn't do anything with it. We can't start a fire with it. We can't really do anything with it. Like I like to point it out, even a solar panel, even a little solar panel, it wouldn't make enough electricity to do anything a decade ago. But today it can be super utilitarian. And now we're recognizing small amounts of electricity, and it's becoming more and more. And I do think that with patience, even 2-3 centuries ago, electroplating of coins, jewelry, and stuff like that could be very easily accomplished. But you had to be patient, and you had to be somebody that knew of electricity and knew of this knowledge that I believe Templars and Masons and things of that did have that knowledge if they got high enough in their levels. But because you couldn't do anything with it, and it took patience and it took understanding, that your farmer would have no reason for it. Your gardener, your mason, your blacksmith, they didn't need to know about electricity. It was pointless to them. So why educate the population with a thing that is hocus pocus? Just leave it to the powers that be. And I've been a family trade secret.
And that's also why they probably didn't do it, because they can falsify coins.
Right. Well, it's not only that, but
it's one part of it. Yeah.
Some of what I believe is speculation, and I believe it because I've tried to pay attention to history and how things have progressed. But I think colloidal silver was holy water up until like 300-400 years ago. I think when you look at what holy water was said to be able to do, and you look at what colloidal silver can do, I think they are synonymous. But because to make colloidal silver needs the knowledge of electricity, and please tell me if there's another way to make colloidal silver. But I believe that knowledge of electricity was then washed from the clergy, and only the maybe cardinals there on up knew of that knowledge. Your normal priests and altar boys didn't need to know that knowledge, because, well, why waste money on making people healthy when the new idea, pharmacology, came in, and the idea is to treat people's symptoms instead of making them healthy. It went from health to medication. How do we medicate the population as opposed to how do we heal the population? And that's my belief, and I'm sticking with it until somebody can show me otherwise. But when we look at the 532 compared to 440 compared to 432, 432, you know, and the symmetrics and all that stuff, there's really been a focus by the powers that be to use the knowledge of health to control the population by making them not as healthy as they could be if they had the right knowledge. And both in minerals, supplements, nature, everything. It's an all-out attack on every level. And the more that we understand our own bodies and our own world, that we realize that most of what we're indoctrinated with is incorrect, including the plane on which we live.
Yeah.
If everything the general population knew is false, the CIA done their job.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Indeed, I was always, when you talked about those small electric currents they use to plate certain objects, I was already thinking about those Baghdad batteries.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also an example.
That's evidence that
Yeah.
the knowledge of electricity had been known at some point in the past. And just the evidence that the knowledge of electricity had been known tells you that they had a knowledge that we at one point have either lost and or never lost, but the general population wasn't privy to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, makes totally sense.
But go on with your pictures. You always have great stuff.
Well,
I reckon you're probably right, though. We weren't privy to it.
mm-hmm.
Right. I do think that
it's the same today.
If we got into the library that they have at the Vatican, I'm sure there's a 700-year-old doctrine that tells us about different metallurgy and different ways of, you know, mixing different metals and making reactions. Any chemical reaction is kind of technically electricity, because if there's a chemical reaction, there's a movement of electrons from point A to point B. That's, in some ways, depending on how you want to pick it apart and how, you know, nitpicky you want to be, that's electricity. Anytime you cause a chemical reaction, there is an electrical change. Yeah, I'm sure we could find a chemical reaction that may not qualify, but I don't know of it right offhand. But this knowledge has been known. And I was bickering with somebody the other day about where do you draw the line on what alchemy is? Because if I can take a hydrogen and turn it into deuterium, it stays the same element, but that's still a change of the nucleus, and I consider that to be alchemy. And that's where I was going into my pyramid thing with somebody, and I do believe that there's some technically alchemy within the structure, but I'd like to make a model and confirm it. And if so, it really shows that this structure is way more advanced than we want to give it credit for. And if there's alchemy, then technically that would be a nuclear reactor. And hence that would make the pyramid the oldest documented nuclear reactor, in addition to electrical. So it's not just electricity like a steam generator or something. It may actually also be a nuclear reactor when we get down to it. So, and that's just a new thing that somebody pointed out to me, that like, hey, that would technically be a, nuclear change.
A nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to play nitpicky, yes, but it's not nuclear as in the way we look at it, where we're taking like something that's radioactive that breaks, and hence it changes the makeup of the nucleus. But if you can take a proton and add a neutron to it, that is a change of the nucleus, and hence I really think that would be technically a nuclear reactor. But it really, who draws the line? What, does Guinness step in and say, oh, that's not a nuclear reactor, that would just be a blah, blah, blah reactor? Who's the nitpicky person that changes, defines, these things? And it really comes down to it, until I get a semi-functioning working model, either in CAD or reality, that demonstrate what I believe is occurring, then somebody could say, okay, I guess that does classify as a nuclear reactor. And if so, it really shows that these people had way more knowledge than I give them credit for. And the more and more and more I play with this whole plateau, the more I think that it really is more awesome than I gave it credit for the week before.
So what does that mean if they were like
what
nuclear
happened?
then? Does that mean this didn't help with those electrical arcings?
Well, if you take a body of water and you're able to add neutrons to the body of water, then and the body of water suck in the neutrons and make some of that body of water become heavy water, what today we call heavy water. And you look at what they call heavy water reactors and light water reactors and then salt water reactors. There's so many different reactors out there. But if we can in today's world, we don't actually make heavy water. We enrich heavy water, which is the same way we don't make uranium-238, which is the one that's radioactive. We enrich it. I don't know how deep you want me to get into it. And does anybody else know about the racetracks? We basically take a uranium element and we run it through a series of magnets and we arc it around a corner, like bend it around that corner. And depending on how heavy it is, it either arcs out wide or it arcs lightly, depending on how heavy it is. And it goes around, I think it's a 1/4 mile track. And within that 1/4 mile track, it only has like a 1/2 inch of deviation. So we're talking very micro amounts. And if it's really heavy, it hits a metal plate and it falls into the ground, and that's depleted uranium. It doesn't have the right element. And if it's the lighter one, it falls and goes right through a whole little slit in the wall. And that's the uranium they're looking for. And they do that one element at a time. And that's what they call enriching uranium. So we're taking what nature has already provided and isolating out the ones that aren't of the element that we want and pooling the ones that are of the element we want, enriching them. That's what they call enriched uranium. Now we can do the same exact thing with water, because if you take a normal glass of water, 1 out of every 8,000 molecules of that water is heavy water, just by nature. And what they do in Holland, where they have way too much electricity, is you can either boil it or electrolyze it. And what that does is it makes the lighter water, normal water, either boil off or electrolyze off. And what's left is the heavy water. And then they take that, they put it in a vial, and they sell it for thousands of dollars a vial because it takes so much energy to produce. But you're not really producing it. You're taking what's already provided by nature and filtering out what you don't want and keeping what you do. I think this structure was actually taking a normal pool of water and sucking a neutron into it and making heavy water, something that today we don't do. And if this structure actually shows us the way to do it mechanically or organically, then I think it would be a learning tool and something I hope I don't, ski into a tree this winter or something like that and, die over. But I do think that it shows us how water can be enriched or manufactured to be heavy water. And something, like I said, today we don't do. And that technically would be a nuclear reaction. And that technically would be alchemy. And that would be everything all the theorists say, oh, they were doing alchemy. Oh, they were doing this. Well, it so may be that this structure is everything they said it was, only they said it so much like, a conspiracy theory, like, Oh, what do you think it flies too? Well, you know, if it winds up flying, that would be far and above and beyond, but I don't think it goes that far. But I do think this structure is quite amazing and may still yet do things that will teach the general knowledge. And I'm still quite amazed at it. And like I said, I'd really like to get somebody like Chris that can put it into a CAD and can actually let the CAD tell us what it's doing instead of me guessing based on all the books I've read and people I've talked to. I'd like a higher ability, like either nature or a computer that thinks it's smarter than nature, tell me what I think. That's what I want.
Okay, Angel.
It's like if I drew the spruce goose on paper and I said, no, it'll fly. You know what the spruce goose is? This guy named Hugh Hefner. Sorry, that's a different guy. Howard Hughes, a great guy in the, early, just before World War II, was making a bunch of stuff. And they made this huge airplane before metal was really, I think since it was during the war, he couldn't get enough metal. So he made a huge airplane out of wood. And they call it the Spruce Goose. And if you Google that, you can see that it's a real airplane. It flew once. And then it was like told it couldn't fly because it was never given like the FAA's seal of approval. But he made this airplane that's bigger than Asimov, the one that the Russian guy made, 225. It's huge. I think it's like 210 foot wingspan, which is bigger than an Airbus 380, bigger than a 747. It's a huge airplane, and it's made of wood. And they told him it will not fly. It will not fly. Physicists stood around and said it will not fly, just like they told the Wright brothers it will not fly. Anyway, he flew it, and they said, and after they dropped that's it right there, huge airplane.
Yeah, I found it. I thought let's find it quickly so everybody can grasp the size of it.
Yeah,
That's wooden.
Yeah,
it's wood, and they called it the Spruce Goose because people told him it would not fly, and he proved them wrong because he made it fly. But he wasn't allowed to make it fly. He was only allowed to taxi around the harbor. So since he couldn't get above like 1,000 feet or something like that, because then the FAA would have given him huge fines and stuff, he just made it hover across above the water and then landed back down in the water and said, "Ha ha, I proved you wrong." Anyway, so when people sit there and these mathematicians say this will not work, and someone proves them wrong, that's how really much faith I have in science over natural science. And but I'd really still like a computer to say, hey, maybe it will work, because a computer saying maybe it will work is better than me, who has nothing after my name but a .com, saying, no, I think it'll work. And it's not a tomb. That's my biggest thing.
No, it's not a tomb, Angel.
That should be the name of my book. It's not a tomb.
None of them are tombs.
Well,
yeah, that's a good name for your book, indeed. Yeah, it's not a tomb.
Yeah, it's not a tomb.
That's an interesting title. That makes everybody curious.
I like to call it, my initial thought was just add water, because really I believe all it needs is water, nature and water. But It's Not a Tomb would also be a good book title. But
not a tomb. Maybe we've helped you get the title for your book.
I think if I did It's Not a Tomb, I'd like to focus on visual pictures of it so people can look at it and say, well, how is this a tomb? But just add water would be more for the people who want to look at it as a functioning machine.
Hey, maybe that could be it. It could be a double one. It's not a tomb. Just add water.
Oh, yeah.
That's even better.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a tomb, just add water. Yeah. And
that's brilliant.
Yeah,
that both ways.
Yeah. That's why these hangouts are so great. You inspire people and give them ideas.
Well, my other focus, and all of them kind of going inside, is my pulling your head out of the sand, because my idea is to get people to look at it in a classroom, scientific view, as opposed to looking at it in the middle of the sand in Egypt and, oh, it's a tomb. Pull your head out of the sand, and like get a different view of it. They're all play on words. I'm a linguistic expert. I'm a cunning linguist.
Yeah.
Well, that was brilliant as always. Maybe we've got the title for your book there. Artist was showing us some stuff. Do you want to go back to showing, Artist?
I've derailed you. You go ahead.
No, I was basically finished. When you popped on, I was basically done. So you came in exactly at the right time. That I was basically finished with my presentation. So no worries.
No problem.
So, had you finished showing Angel though, Artist?
Well, I think he grabs.
I'll rewatch it.
Yeah, and I think he understands basically what I'm talking about.
It's just evidence of electricity within our plane.
Yeah,
on a massive scale.
On a massive scale, indeed. Yeah, you said that perfectly. Proof. That's what we always want to find. Proof. That's why you want to build a pyramid, to have proof.
Well, unless somebody had, again, that piece of wood example you showed, an average person 100 years ago would not have had the ability to look at a picture of a piece of wood with an arc of electricity through it. Not in video, not even probably in photographs, because you got to think 100 years ago, a book was expensive. A photograph was a rarity. Only rich and famous had photographs. A Polaroid was at the 60s and 70s. Polaroids came around. That was when the average person was able to actually get their fingertips on photos. Yeah. Before that, photos, you had to have a guy with a $2,000 camera, and that's $2,000 in the old days. That'd be like a small house camera.
And also the shutter time of the cameras were very long. So you have to buy a stand to put it on and everything, and make it very level, and that it wasn't moving around. Otherwise, you get blurred pictures.
I'm one of the unique people who took photography in my high school, and I worked in a dark room, and I worked with those nasty chemicals. And I really think in some cases I took really good pictures, but totally fubbed up the development. So I ruined the pictures. Yeah. So it's not only good knowledge of how to take the pictures and the lighting, but good knowledge of how to develop it also. Yeah. Also, it was skill on multiple levels. Now anyone can take their little toy, and if they don't like the picture they took the first time, they can take 12 more.
Yeah. Exactly. I saw also we had a dark room when I did in graphic design schooling. And we also had to take pictures with an old camera that you had to set with your hands. You had the lens you had to rotate with your hands to get it sharp, and you had those all kinds of levels in it and balls in it, and then the top of the ball had to be a certain type of color, and the level had to be in the middle of the light, and you have to adjust the light. And you also had a device to actually measure the light, what the light was going towards your camera, to measure the light.
For development, if you use too much of one chemical, or you let somebody move the curtain and you got too much light, or any light, there was you let it dry too long, you let it soak too long. There was so many hurdles you had to take.
Or you didn't furnish it good at the end. So if you didn't do that, basically it turned brown very quickly because you didn't have the surface varnish on it. I know it, and that's it was very art.
It was an art, and it was also a skill. So if sometimes I would let other people develop my stuff, and I would take the picture. It's just whatever you were good at, it hand it off. But nowadays, it puts the average person can take a picture. In fact, the unaverage person can take a picture. These things do auto light sensitivity, auto this, auto that, auto facial recognition, everything.
That's why I also have an old Canon camera. It's a digital camera, but an old lens on it that you can adjust yourself. So if you want to have certain things in focus and other the surrounding blurred, you can change it with your lens still. Yeah. Yeah, that was great. Yeah. And yeah, what you also
Without
can do,
facial recognition.
I have a bigger one with an old lens you can screw on still. And what is interesting, my dad had an old camera, a Canon camera from about 25 years ago. And I had now bought a new Canon camera, a digital one, and that old lens still fits on there.
Oh yeah, well they're lucky to keep a standard, thank you, on some things.
Only you have to adjust it by hand, the lens, because it doesn't work automatically. And I find it even more handy, and then I can pinpoint what is sharp, what I want to be sharp in the picture, not automatically. And then you can play, because sometimes I like to to get captures of.
Like many other things, it does require a learning curve on your side. It puts the control back in your hands.
Yeah, that's what I like. Yeah. But it's probably also what you did in the dark room when you light the picture without any negative on it. That you only put your hand on it. And then,
well, it also
give it a light. Then you had the shape of your hand on that on the piece of photograph paper. And it was also fun to do.
But nowadays, since people can do their own editing with Photoshop and stuff like that, it makes it a lot easier when they look back at the NASA photos and they see mistakes. They can say, oh, the person forgot to do the layering thing here. Or, this wasn't, oh, look at that mistake they made. You know,
that's handy,
because they have had hands-on and they see the mistakes because they've done them themselves. It's a lot easier. Like,
yeah, that's also interesting with the moon landing. The original tapes were erased because everybody said, let's get those moon landing tapes up to date with high quality. And all of a sudden we erased all that sections of tape. Everyone has one of them.
There's enough that have been released that people can see the fob ups and people who have done editing. You know, back before anyone got hands-on with editing, you really couldn't see what a mistake yielded. And now that someone can say, oh, when I have the lighting wrong, this happens. Or when this happens, that happens. And, you know, and people can compare it to repeatable reality. So I think it makes it easier for people to see the mistakes, which is why they kind of want to, like, draw your attention anywhere else.
Also, Chris Monk sent me a message, and he basically tell Angel, I'll see what I can do the time permitting.
Well, I do thank him.
Oh, I was going to say that, Artist. I got that message from Chris as well.
Yeah, me too. And I thought, let's read it to Angel.
Well, I think he has a lot more gray matter in that idea than I do, or at least not more experience in those matters. Yeah. And he also has the programs, the knowledge of how to manipulate them to get them to, you know, yield the results.
I don't mean to put anybody else down. I really don't. But he's mega intelligent guy, isn't he?
He is. Well, that, and you know, you can get somebody who's super intelligent but has never played with a particular piece of software or device. Let's say no one's ever played with an abacus. You know, they could be super intelligent, and if the first time somebody hands them an abacus, they look at it and go like, huh? You know, but after they know how to use it, you can get somebody who doesn't have a lot of gray matter and or doesn't have a high IQ, can still use an abacus. I mean, it wasn't designed that you have to be a scientist to know how to use it. It's actually pretty simple once you understand there's, you know, 5 beads and 2 beads, and it's all on base, technically 5. But it is base 10. You know, have you ever, am I losing you guys when I say an abacus? I got a couple of over here. I can grab them.
You see that picture that Chris sent? That picture, by the way, just so you know, Angel.
Okay.
Let me present it for a second.
Yeah. Really old calculators.
He sent you that picture.
Oh, yeah, I see it. You know, I've always been a fascination of how, you know, why they use these things and how people say they're easy. And it's really just a big calculator. And once you know how to use it, it's really simple. These are 5 and 2, and it's all based on once you get to 5, you move 1 over here based, you know, it's just math. And it was really simple. And
you probably found them in a second-hand store or on a flea market.
eBay.
Okay.
I didn't pay more than I think $10 for either of them. But
that's nice.
You know, if I wanted to, it's like I could do my taxes on this. You know, it's just a calculator. And I liked something really simple like this because if I had to, I could recreate it with, you know, just a couple of sticks and some like beads or, you know, something like that.
And that calculator you have in your hands right now is free energy.
It is. It's free energy, and if I stop, I can come back to it later. I can use it to tally things, and once you know how to use it, it's actually quite cool. Multiplication, division. Actually, it doesn't do division. You have to multiply in fractions. But either way, you know, even computers can't do negative. They have to add. They have to add a negative. They can't subtract something, if you know what I mean. But it's all the same way. It's the other thing is this is since it's logic, it is just the way a computer does math. You can just add. Everything is progressive. Even when you're adding a negative, you're adding a negative. You're not subtracting something.
It's funny that I have almost a similar one with colored ones on there. And then you had a clock on one side. They used them back in the day in schools. You had a clock to tell time. You had a clock on it, and you had also those beats you can move around to calculate. And I have 2 of them.
One of the things, my other side issue is I do think the AE map is more of a calculator for synchronizing time. The way that it's designed to be read, I'm not 100% sure it's a true representation of the plane on which we live, based on some of the anomalies on it, based on land sizes. But I don't really want to get into that bickering.
I know what you mean.
I do think it was really designed to synchronize time between point A and point B, and things of that nature. And I'm working on that because I do think that much of our world is mathematical. I think when it was all lined out, the Masons, the Templars, the Priories, all those people knew this knowledge that farmers, like I said, farmers, blacksmiths, you know, they didn't need to know. Why boggle them with reality? Just keep them, you know, where they're dumb enough to you know, keep the horses riding correctly and, you know, feed me with food. And they don't need to know about how I make my money and how I can pull energy from the sky. And, you know, I really think even back in the day with people on their staffs, how they would touch somebody and shoot lightning bolts and stuff, it was just a one-time zap, you know, but they only had to do it one time. You know, it's like, okay, I got 1 shot in my shotgun. As long as I shoot somebody and everyone else thinks I can shoot them next, no one's going to approach me. They don't have to call my bluff. I don't have to crank a second time, you know, because it might take 20, 30 minutes to re-energize my staff. So, and I think that all had to do with the general knowledge of electricity and just enough, or static electricity, really, that, you know, it's always there, but it's not always massive amounts. It's minute amounts over time.
You even have that sometimes when you say shake somebody's hand, that you can get a spark.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
I've had that a lot of times when I shake somebody's hand.
When somebody asked me about the pyramid, I said, look, you know, you can get 2 kids in a room with a rug with socks on, and they can run around the room zapping each other. It's like a joke. It's a thing. But they, you know, if they do it too quickly, it's a small zap. If they like run around for like 5 minutes and touch you, it's a bigger zap. But if they run around for like an hour, it's still only, there's a point where it achieves its maximum capacity. And after that, you can't get any more. It's the same thing with the pyramid structure. It can only achieve a maximum, and then you start leaching it off. And nature provides the electricity, and you just leach it off at a rate where you keep it at its maximum on a constant level, and you play with that, and nature provides the rest. And this is, again, something that 100 years ago we really didn't even understand what static electricity was. So trying to explain to somebody, or trying to have even people comprehend what the pyramid was doing would have been, impossible.
Yeah.
So they came up with a tomb theory, and it's been sticking around.
Oh yeah, they always
Foothold that they have established. They're establishing foothold after foothold, climbing up the world of deception. And the more that they can get you to not believe what reality is, the more they can give you a cupcake made of synthetic particles and pieces and flavoring, and you will eat it and be happy that they have won, because they can get you to eat anything, maintain a state of malnourishment, and the doctors are the holy men in white coats that always solve your problems, which are 90% of the time malnutrition.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me that in the future they would have a glow-in-the-dark apple. Oh, a glow-in-the-dark apple.
They have. They
already have. Oh no.
Here's what it is. See, as far as when they're doing genetic manipulation, they need to have, when you shoot guns, you need to have a tracer bullet so you can tell where it's going, because you can't see where the bullet's going. You need something you could visually see.
Yeah.
What they do is the same way they have the bioluminescent is technically what its name is, that jellyfish and some worms and stuff have. They will add the bioluminescent gene as well as the gene they are trying to present, because they can't tell if the gene that makes you not grow hairs under your arm took root unless you grow to maturity and your hair under your arm doesn't grow. Mm-hmm. So if they stimulate like 30 cats and they both present the gene that makes it so their hair doesn't grow and the gene for the jellyfish that makes them glow in the dark, when they have the glow in the dark cat that comes to maturity, or baby kitten that glows in the dark, they also have a good possibility that the gene that they were trying to present took root, and they use one of them as a tracer gene. And the one that they use is the bioluminescence, because that is one which can be visually seen. Mm-hmm. The side effect from it is that when they first tried it, they were doing it with cats, which is why I mentioned that. And since they were using it from the jellyfish, it also brought with it the gene for making it's actually, from what I understand, it's a oil that excretes from the gene, from your cells, that makes you itch. The itchiness of a jellyfish. Yeah. And that made this cat be in constant pain. But, they were able to trace the gene because the cats were glow in the dark. And if you look you can find them on Google, that they were selling them in Japan for thousands of dollars. You can get a cat that would glow in the dark.
Oh, yeah.
What they didn't tell you is the cat would be in constant irritation for its entire life.
In what country? China?
It was in Japan, actually.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was Japan that was selling them.
Oh yeah, indeed. Insane.
Just look up glow in the dark cat. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, I've seen it. If you type it in, I typed in glow in the dark cat in Japan, and in that.
They had frogs that did it too.
Yeah.
They can do it they use the bioluminescence as a gene.
Yeah. Genetic engineering. Yeah. 10 bizarre examples of genetic engineering. Glow in the dark cat is one of them.
And then after they do 2 or 3 experiments where they put the bioluminescence in there, then they pull the bioluminescence gene out, and they still continue because they know they got the correct you know, the correct gene pattern in there, the correct
Yeah.
manipulation of the organism
Yeah.
in order for the gene that they wanted to pushed. You know, and they use trial and error until they get it right. And, you know, they wind up getting, if you've seen the movie, was it Aliens, where they have 2 or 3 Sigourney, there you go, Sigourney Weavers, where they're like all, you know, they'll get it wrong every once in a while, but you know, those cats, you know, born with like 10 legs and stuff like that, they didn't matter. They were just cats.
I found here, this is a site, basically 10 bizarre examples of genetic engineering, the glow-in-the-dark tests. In 2007, South Korean scientists altered the cat's DNA to glow in the dark. Yeah.
They have trees that do it as well. In fact, there were some cities that were considering purchasing the bioluminescent palm trees to replace street lights.
Huh.
If that's not scary enough.
Yeah, indeed. Scary.
Well, my fear is what's going to happen when these bioluminescent trees seed, although they probably won't seed, because most of the time when they make something GMO, they also make it sterile.
Yeah.
And they do that primarily because it's patent protection. They don't want you to be able to reproduce their product and then sell it, which is the primary reason why the GMO corn and the GMO cotton and the GMO this and the GMO that, most of them are sterile. They do that for their own patent protection.
Yeah.
We used to have this poster when I was younger. I've said it before because one of my boy's dad was a farmer, and it was a poster of a cauliflower, but it said, "There's enough sprays sprayed onto this cauliflower to turn you into one."
I'll believe that.
Can I just say, guys, I don't mean to be mean, because obviously, if you know, I was on a really long hangout last night, but we've been going for 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Well,
that's cool.
If you want to go, I joined late, so I'm.
Is that, well? I've got to go to work tomorrow, and I haven't really slept this weekend.
No, we basically discussed everything we wanted to discuss, in my opinion. Isn't that right?
You know it's never ending, because you can be
I'm just happy to be here.
Back next Sunday to talk about it again.
Yeah, Patricia Steer will probably like this hangout because he's also a vegan and into healthy food.
Yeah, it's just bad that we're just not looking enough, are they? Even if they put it even on the packet.
I think that if we did our diet correctly, we could probably, well, I'm sure Patricia is a perfectly good example, and I've actually had friends that are vegans, and I could say word because I've had a couple of them pass away, that if they focus on nuts and things like that have proteins, they can live perfectly healthy on a vegan diet. But you have to be aware and monitor what you eat. You can't just, go to any fast food restaurant. You have to be aware of what you're eating. And I honestly think if you could probably get by with just juicing your whole life too. There's lots of things that you could do, but you need to take the responsibility yourself for what you're eating, and you need to be aware of your own food. And the only person that cares the most about your health is you. And that's the best thing I could say. You are what you eat, and you're the only person who cares the most about your health. Doctors will just allude you to your health because they just care about your money. They may care about your health a little bit too, but they care about your money because if you're not paying them, they're not going to help you.
No. They won't do it for free.
Dear me, such a sad place we live.
Well, we as a research group make people aware of all kinds of things. Healthy eating, old monolithic structures, the place we live in. We basically do research and give our knowledge to the other people so they can also live, if they choose to, a healthy lifestyle. And also do more research and search about the truth on the place we live in.
If people realize that I'd almost say primarily been lied to their whole indoctrinational period between, you know, 1st and 12th grade.
Mhm.
That, and even through colleges, that they should really do their own research and learn things from build their own foundation of knowledge.
Yep.
Trust but verify, and you will find out that many of the foundational non-facts that you've been given are untrue. So you need to build a new foundation to the world in which you live. Many of the, you know, 777 bombing, 9/11, many things, the truth is not what you were told. And once you understand the truth and build your own foundation, many other things will fall into place. And don't be discouraged when 90% of the population out there tells you that you're on crack, because
You've got to be, haven't you? Because you're saying the truth. So
they are the ones that are living in a world of deception, and you are the one who is building your own reality built on foundation.
it doesn't just cover like 9/11. It covers the things they're doing to our food. It covers our history. It covers our language. It covers the pyramids. It covers 9/11. It covers everything now.
It does. It's bigger and bigger and bigger. Mostly, the more I started down this rabbit hole mid-2000s, and the more knowledge that I have that is the foundation of my beliefs, the more I understand that the news is the last place you want to be getting your knowledge from.
Yes.
Yeah. And so is school.
Need to come to you guys.
Well, basically to these kind of hangouts, you get good
Yeah.
knowledge from. Yeah.
You need to pay attention to facts. Well, the problem is what you read in school, you assume is facts. What you read in school is glazed over ambitions, glazed over embellishments. You know, I really wish I could say don't believe what you read in school, but some of it is true. The names of the country you live in, maybe.
Yeah.
Even then, it's questionable.
Little bits are true, but most of it's a lie because it's the wrong history, isn't it?
It is. We are given a glazed over embellishment with the truth that they want you to believe. Because if you were really told the true truth, if you're really told the real backing behind most of the wars or skirmishes or disagreements, you will usually find that they were fabricated to the banker's best interests. Not the people, not the country, but the banker. And that's about all I can say there.
Well, basically, this is a great way to end the hangout.
Yeah, well, you
With those great words.
Artist and Angel night, even though Artist was presenting some work at the beginning, but the A's night. The A and the A's night.
Well, again, thank you for allowing me to be here.
Oh, yeah, you're very welcome.
Angel, we missed you last week.
Yeah, we always miss you when you're not around.
Yeah, you're part of the family now.
Oh, yeah, you have a great input on this channel. Great.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, we have been going for this time. I don't mean to be
You cut off and go to sleep. You got work in the morning.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. You're 8 hours behind. You're lucky. It's only what 4 o'clock in the
5
afternoon.
o'clock here. I'm still sunny outside.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy. It's been dark for about the last 10 hours here. Anyway, I'm sorry, everybody. As I said, I had a really long, late hangout. I didn't really sleep last night, and I'm still in my pajamas.
It's okay, Karen. We continue next Sunday.
Yeah, and well, big flat earth hugs for everybody on the panel. Thank you, Angel. I'm giving you one. No one can see me, but I'm giving a hug. And everybody watching and everybody that's going to watch. And thank you, Angel, and Artist, for all that presentation again.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Judith and Patricia. Anyway,
thank you all.
back tomorrow, so see you tomorrow. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Say goodbye. Say goodbye, Angel.
Bye.
Okay, bye.